Today we're going to make two different kinds of coconut pies. By special request, I'll be making a coconut meringue and my favorite, coconut cream. The place we have to begin with our pie is a good crust. And of course, you're welcome to use the Pillsbury crusts in your refrigerated section from the store. And I do that in a pinch sometimes, but my favorite crust is kind of a tweak that I've developed from Reed Drummond, and I've kind of made it my own. And when I do cook, I'm a pinch of this and a smidge of that kind of gal, but baking is very different and you have to be extremely precise. We need 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, and let's face it, if we're making pie, we're probably not going to be watching calories, so I add about a tablespoon of sugar. This crust is actually very, very flaky, almost like a shortbread, so I want just a little bit of sweetness to it. We also have 1 egg, a stick of butter that we've sliced, a cup of shortening that we've cubed, 5 tablespoons of icy cold water, and 1 tablespoon of vinegar. Lightly beat your egg and add it to the flour mixture while you continue to pulse. Add your vinegar as well now, and then gradually add in the 5 tablespoons of water until the dough becomes a clump that pulls away from your blades. Plop it all onto a floured cutting board, slice it in half, and make 2 discs, which you will wrap in saran wrap and place in your refrigerator for 2 hours. I really don't like cleaning very much, so I prep my counters with a clean tea towel. I just sprinkle it with flour, and then I roll out my pie dough on that tea towel. Then when I'm finished, I can just fold it up and my counters are clean. I roll my pie dough out until it's very thin and about 3 inches larger than the diameter of my pie plate. And now you'll see another reason why I like to have a tea towel. I lift the corner up, the dough just rolls right over my rolling pin, and then I can lift the whole thing up and just transfer it to my pie plate. Now we'll flute the edges. You can use your thumbs or a wooden spoon handle to make pretty little edging all the way around your pie plate. Next we'll be docking the pie crust, which means to just take a fork and you'll poke holes all around the bottom and up the sides so that your pie crust doesn't bubble up as you're baking it. So we're going to blind bake these pie shells, and that just means they're not going to have a filling in them. So they have a tendency to buckle a little bit. So to further hold them down, we'll take a piece of parchment paper or waxed paper, fold it into half, then half again, and then one more time, and you'll have a cone shape. You trim the top of that off, and then you open it out and you'll have a circle. You place that right on top of your pie dough, and then you fill your pie plate with dried rice or dried beans. That holds that down, and once they're cooled after you bake your pie crust, you can just put them in a baggie and keep them in your pantry. You will not be able to cook with them again, but you'll be able to use them repeatedly as pie weights. If you don't want to mess with pie weights, there's an additional way that you can hold your pie crust down while baking, and that is to just find another pie plate that may be a little bit smaller in circumference and just place that inside the pie crust that you've already laid out and docked, and then bake that and let it cool and remove it. And here's what both look like just before you pop them in the oven. Now to make our custard filling, we'll need 4 eggs, butter, vanilla, 1/4 cup of cornstarch, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a can of coconut milk, and since we are making pie, guys, nobody is going to consider this diet food, so we are using sweetened baker's coconut. We need 2/3 cup of sugar and 1 cup of half and half. For anybody that may not have used coconut milk before, I just want to show you, it does separate when it sits on the shelf. So when you see the top of it, it's going to be like this plug of thick glop, and you'll poke your spoon down and underneath is thin liquid. That's the way it's supposed to be. So here we have our flour, our cornstarch, our sugar and salt in a pot. Then we add all of our liquid ingredients and we whisk, stirring really well until everything's combined over a medium heat. We let it all melt and come to a boil. I just want to make a quick insert here that this is just a standard custard cream pie, and it lends itself to many variations. You could do a vanilla cream pie, a butterscotch cream pie, or even like your grandma's favorite chocolate cream pie. The only difference for chocolate would be you would increase your sugar to 1 cup. You would omit the coconut milk. You would still have 1 cup of half and half and 1 cup of whole milk. And then you would add 2 squares of unsweetened baking chocolate at this point. Melt it all together, and the rest of the recipe from here will be exactly the same. So here's what our custard's going to look like after we've been stirring on a medium-high heat for about 2 minutes, not leaving our pan because we don't want anything to scorch. It will have gotten very thick. It will coat the back of a spoon like this and not just drip off. At this point, we're going to turn off the heat and remove it from the stove. So we have our egg yolks, and then we have our delicious custard. So if we tried to combine the two of these right now by putting the egg yolks into our very hot custard, the eggs would turn into scrambled eggs. So you have to do something called tempering. You take a spoonful of the very hot custard, you pour it gently into your eggs, stir it up, make sure it's well mixed, grab another spoonful, stir it in, and you're going to do this over and over until you've brought the temperature of your egg yolks up a little bit. And by doing it this way, you can then incorporate the egg yolks into your custard without having a big clumpy mess. So at this point, we return it to the fire, and after our egg yolks are in, I've actually moved to a whisk now. I want to go ahead and mix this in beautifully. These were really yellow eggs, so my custard's going to have a little bit more of a yellow color today. Very rich eggs will do that for you. So now you're going to want to just bring it back up to a very high heat again and cook for 2 full minutes. So here we are after cooking for about 2 minutes. You want these puffy bubbles that almost look like little volcano puffs coming up. See those? You want to make sure you don't let anything scorch, stirring constantly, and your mixture will have thickened considerably so that when you draw your whisk through, you see these lines that remain. That's exactly the consistency we want. And then off the heat she goes. Once off the heat, we're going to add our vanilla and butter. And the reason we do that off the heat is because vanilla is primarily alcohol. So if you put that in during the cooking process, you're just going to evaporate all of that right out because of your heat. So we do it after the fact, and then we retain all that delicious flavor. Add 1 cup of sweetened coconut and stir well until all your coconut is evenly distributed through your custard. So here we're going to make our meringue, and egg whites do a lot better when they're room temperature. If they're about 70 degrees, you get a lot more volume. So you start with them room temperature, add 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar, and beat like crazy. When you have a lot of volume and body to your egg whites, you're going to reduce the speed of your mixer and add about 2 tablespoons of sugar for every 1 egg white that you've used. And then add the vanilla as well and continue mixing until they're very glossy. And you are finished when they are very stiff peaks and they look like this. Now this is the part where you just pile mounds of fluffy, light, glistening beauty on top of your crust. You want to press it down into each of the little points so that it makes a really good seal, because meringue has a tendency to shrink a little bit and pull away from the edges as it bakes. So we want to sprinkle the very top with just plain white granulated sugar to give it a little extra glisten, and pop her into the oven. Lastly, to make a topping for our pie, we're going to toast some coconut by just sprinkling it on a foil-lined cooking sheet and then bake it in the oven about 350 degrees, checking it every 5 minutes and stirring it until it's a beautiful golden brown. We have a sweet guest in the kitchen. Can you sit? Can you sit, sweet boy? Oh yes, there you go. He's glad to take any leftovers Grandma has. Love you, Obi boy. Thanks for helping me. Now we'll move to making the topping for the second pie, which is heavy whipping cream. I'll need 2 cups, and we want everything icy cold. The beaters, the bowl, and the cream. This is going to be just the opposite of what you want for meringue. So we beat until stiff peaks form, and then we add 6 tablespoons of plain white granulated sugar and about a tablespoon or maybe a little more of a really good quality vanilla. You can spread your topping on with a knife if you want, but I'm going to do some rosettes with a piping bag and then sprinkle our toasted coconut all over the top. This is surely a thing of beauty, but wait till you taste it. Both of these pies are absolutely fabulous, no matter how you slice them.